Uh, Welcome to this panel on law enforcement's relations with the community. My name is Muqtadar Khan. I'm a professor at the University of Delaware. I teach in the Department of Political Science and International Relations. This is a very special panel. As for those of you who were not here with our breakfast discussion, I want to summarize for you that this conference on social justice is a very, very big topic, so we are not covering all aspects of social justice. The working definition of social justice that we are using for this conference, and it might help you to understand the context, is that in a democratic society, in a constitutional society, social justice is the right of everybody, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of national origin, regardless of ethnicity, to have access to the same rights and same privileges that the government and its society and a state provides. So for example, if in the United States Constitution guarantees freedom of religion, then freedom of religion should be available to everybody, Muslims, Christians, Jews, and others. If the state of Delaware or the government of the United States provides security and safety to its citizens, then it must provide it across the board equally to everybody, whether you are black or white, regardless of your cultural preferences or lifestyle, regardless of what you believe in religiously or what is your national origin. It doesn't matter where you came from, as long as you are a citizen. In fact, the United States Constitution is so profound that you don't even have to be a citizen of the United States to be eligible to enjoy the privileges that the United States Constitution provides, as long as you are within the borders of the United States. So that's an important thing to understand. But in this conference today, we are focusing broadly on three issues. And being an academic, I try to put it in an academic way. We are focusing on basically three Ps. One P is prejudice, which is racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. So we want to mobilize people of Delaware. We want to increase awareness and consciousness of people against prejudice, against racism, against discrimination of the other, regardless of what the other's ethnicity or religion is. The second P that we want to focus on is on the issue of poverty. One of the biggest challenges to American democracy and harmony is the growing inequality in our country. The disparity between what the top 3 or 4% own and what the bottom of the people. 3% of Americans today own 55% of America. So 3% of Americans have more wealth than the rest of the 97% of us. This huge inequality of wealth creates inequality of power. And after Citizens United, the law that allows very rich people to throw in a lot of money into our political system, it has made a mockery of our democracy. A very famous poet in India once looked at the Taj Mahal, this beautiful building, and he said that the emperor has made a mockery of poor people's love. I love my wife just as much as the monarch, and just because I can't build a Taj Mahal doesn't mean. So yes, we can also be equal citizens if we all were billionaires. So that is another problem that we have to face as to how poverty and income inequality in this country is undermining our democracy. And the third P that we want to talk about is police relations. The images across the country are very, very frightening, especially starting with what happened in Ferguson, and then what you saw in Baltimore, and then this whole story of Quan McDonald in Chicago, which is simply unfolded, and the chief of police lost his position very recently in Chicago. So there is this growing perception in our country that the law enforcement is institutionally biased. The term that we use is racism without racists. So while individuals are very helpful and nice, the system is so structured that there is either racial bias or ethnic bias. Fortunately, Delaware is to a great extent free of these problems. But today we have with us a highly distinguished panel of people who represent law enforcement in this area, and they are going to talk to us. They will make their initial remarks, but this session is going to be driven more by your questions. They are here to answer. This is about community relations. So the law enforcement representatives are here to talk to you and answer your questions. So please be open to asking questions. Do not be afraid of being politically incorrect. Do not be afraid. The cavalry here is to protect you, not to charge you if you ask tough questions. So without much ado, I'm going to introduce our panel to you. Our keynote speech today is going to be given by County Executive Tom Gordon. Tom Gordon is a very close friend, both personally and of the community. He was also a former police chief, so he knows exactly what is happening from both perspectives, from the perspective of the police operation and from the political perspectives of civilians overseeing the police operations. And because of his close interaction with the Muslim community, he also understands the community's concerns. So this delicate balance of protecting the citizens and the state while not undermining the rights, freedoms, and also the privileges of communities who are being watched. And I'm sorry to say that American Muslim community is perhaps one of the most watched community in this country today. So from that perspective, County Executive Tom Gordon is in a very strong position to do this. His support for this convention is quite apparent. On his own volition, he has made sure that there is enough protection for us outside. So you can see police relations already in action out there before we even begin this panel today. So he will be our keynote speaker. After that, we have Colonel Setting, who is the Chief of Police of Newcastle County. We have had, in the recent past, a lot of interaction with him on different cases, from concerns about security for religious places. The county police has taken initiatives to safeguard our religious sacred places. We also have another event on December 10th where the police and the law enforcement are going to share with us the measures that they are taking to ensure that all religious places in the state of Delaware and in our county are protected and are safe. And then finally, we have Harpreet Singh Mokha, who is director for the North Atlantic region, which means Philadelphia, Delaware, New Jersey, this area. He is the director representing the Department of Justice in community relations. And one of the big issues, for example, like I engage in a lot of discussions about Muslim radicalization. Since 9/11, since 2001 until now, American Muslims have killed 50 people in this country, period. And if you add what has happened in California as also terrorist activity, it's just 64. But the amount of discussion we have in the media about demonization, to give you a contrast, in the same period of time, mass shootings in this country have accounted for 280,000 dead people. 280,000 dead people in the last 14 years in mass shootings. But there is no profiling of any community, no racial profiling, no ethnic profiling. But Muslim radicalism, which has accounted for anywhere between 50 to 64, and the number of arrests, for example, there have been lots of complaints in the American Muslim community that there is an entrapment policy in the FBI. But our experience in Delaware with the FBI and Terrorism Task Force has been incredible. Jeff Rising, who is the current head of the Terrorism Task Force, he couldn't be here today, but he's speaking in my class on Tuesday. If some of you are interested in asking the FBI directly about their nature of operations, you're welcome to my class on Tuesday at 3:30 at the University of Delaware, where you can talk to them. Tim Keith-Whiter, who is now also part of the Newcastle Police and is on it, he's going to be attending the panels today and tomorrow. He's probably here in the audience if I have not seen him. So without much ado, these are the issues that we are looking at: police relations with our community. Do we have trust in our law enforcement people? The trust is very important. For example, when I was listening to the people at the mosque in San Bernardino talk about this, everyone said he is devout and pious, and I kept thinking, what is this thing? Every time you go to a mosque and ask the person who was involved in this shooting is from your mosque, and like the Boston shooting, and everyone seems to say they are pious. The community needs to have trust, respect, and confidence in the law enforcement. That's when they will reach out to the law enforcement. I should be able to call Colonel Setting on the phone and say, Colonel, I don't want to make too much big deal about it, but I have a colleague who says sometimes things which make me feel very nervous. Can you check into it? That's an important part. This is what community policing is all about, where you build relationship, because ultimately both of us, the communities and the law enforcement, have the same goal, to keep our societies safe. And as long as our societies are safe, our religious places are safe. So that is the background under which we're going to have this panel. So without much ado, the first speaker, County Executive Tom Gordon.
Thank you. It's really, truly an honor to be here today. We have a friend of ours just walked in, Congressman John Carney, who's here early. I think he's speaking later on. But let me start with probably 5,000 feet. Same guy who spoke, I'm sure, earlier is here with us. You know, the United States, for a lot of reasons, Delaware for some reasons, because the distribution of wealth is a problem. And we feel it in almost everything we do, that there's fights with almost every police issue where there didn't used to be. But let me talk specifically about the Muslim community. I think that it's a community that has been isolated for too long, that no one knows, except they're all technicians, doctors, but it's a kind of a seen by most people as a secret society. One of the things we've got to do is begin to open that up by we have committees in Newcastle County, whether it's planning and diversity, Board of Adjustment. You've got to begin to take time and get involved. You got to begin to take time to get involved with the democratic process. 27 committees, Democratic committees in Newcastle County, and probably same amount of Republican committees. You got to take time to become committee people. And then you have to take time and have somebody run for office, because the good thing about Americans, if you're involved in a political process, everybody fights together. Money's allocated politically. And when you are all professionals, but when it comes to those kind of things, you become isolated, it's a very dangerous thing. About a year and a half ago, the chief and I and others said, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the Arab world is breaking down among us. The Arab Spring didn't work. We're going to soon have problems in our homeland. And what do we know about our Muslim community? Not much. And we began meeting. And at first, I think there was some mistrust. Why do you want us to talk to you? And we began a series of great meetings, and we're coming up with a great program. And basically, it was our feeling that this stuff is going to continue, this phobia. Something's going to happen around us, and then we've got to worry about our own homegrown people. Sam and I know it wasn't 15 years ago we were dealing with KKK right here in Delaware, right over the line. We have a lot of people. What we thought was going to happen and could happen is that there'll be backlash from somebody that stole your religion and called themselves ISIS, and they do something. So what can we do? Well, we had to build a relationship so that a group core of Muslims could come in the police department in 15 minutes notice. We put a thing called a fusion center in, where it's 20 TVs that will hook up to your mosque. Now, how that's going to work, we had to develop an app. And this app would allow, if there's a problem, you hit the emergency button and up comes your cameras on our screens. We can't do it. Has to be done for you. You have a lot of IT people, so I know you can make sure that it works that way. That app just got developed, but in the interim, we have many meetings, because what has to happen is, as Doctor said, a core of your leaders have to have the ability to call the chief of police or the command staff and say, I was followed home today. I've got a suspicious car out in front of my mosque. We've got somebody stalking our school. And that's not a 911 call, that's a call to the command staff. And they have to know personally your leaders and say, we're going to take this serious. That relationship is ongoing. We have a meeting on the 10th to finalize it. So that if we have a level of trust, so if we think there's going to be some backlash, maybe level 1, we have a police car at every one of your centers. You know, there's some level, maybe we're inside your centers. But there had to be a trust that you give us the description and the inside of your schools and the inside of your mosque and the inside of your cameras in the event that we do have a terrorist attack. And that process is ongoing. It's completed. We're having a really great meeting on the 10th where we think we're going to finalize that outline. And it involves, if you can imagine, we get by the way, the FBI truly thinks very highly of our Muslim community. And that's just not the chief can talk about that. They believe that we need to be very, very vigilant. And he tells us and shares with us everything that's going on. And we have a group that we can share with now. So that if you get this level of threat, we mobilize within 15 minutes. In the room comes the colonel, the state police, the colonel of county police, the paramedic chief, head surgeon at Christiana Hospital, the fire chief. And from this room, we deploy resources. And I think one of our biggest tests was a homicide that took place in your community about a month and a half ago. And not to talk too much about it, but we responded within a few days, made an arrest, the person that did it. We contained the press, and nobody got injured. And that's the kind of priority we give your community as we give every community. But I can't emphasize enough that you got all these great professionals. I've never arrested a Muslim child, and I have 23 years in policing, believe it or not. I was a patrol officer all the way up to colonel. John over here helped me get promoted to chief. And I went to FBI school, Secret Service school, police executive school, every school you can name. And when you had one problem with one person, you thought you might have had the plague or something. It's a great community, full of great professionals. So why is there all this disconnect? We have a statewide TV show, and tomorrow, I believe, there's going to be use of that TV station for your programs. We need to get out in the public. We need to talk about your religion. We need to talk about how you value life and that your religion is being stolen by a few bunch of nuts, just like the KKK, and everybody has their fringe crazy people. These aren't your people, but without the public knowing what that school, what that thing is, that mosque next to them, there's a temple, Indian temple in Hockessin, and people are scared about it. You know, we need to hold county events there. We need to hold civic associations there. But more importantly, I know all the doctors and technicians and all the people that have got all the great jobs. You got to take time out, and you got to get involved in the political process. And that does take time. We were proud to say that we hired our first Muslim paramedic in the last class. We opened the county up to anybody that can afford to take less money like that to come to work for us. But we walk the talk. We believe that the fastest growing community there, the sooner we can open up what's believed to be, isolated community, I think we can fix this problem real quickly, because you have great families with great values that the rest of the state could use, the rest of this country could use. And we're one government, and John feels the same way with the state. It's time to break this veil of secrecy and talk about the great community that you are. And with that, we're going to continue on, and I don't know if you want to.
Thank you, Tom. Our next speaker is Colonel Elmer Setting. He's the Chief of Police for the Newcastle County. We got to interact with the Colonel very often in the last few months, especially after the tragedy that took place in our community in August after the homicide of a young Muslim. And it was very, shall we say, for the community, it was very reassuring. The frankness, the candidness with which the law enforcement interacted with us. There was clearly no attempt to use that as a leverage to do other things in the community. There was, that's usually one of the fears, that if a Muslim is arrested and they find out that you haven't paid a ticket or something, then that becomes a leverage for law enforcement agencies in other parts of the country to to get Muslims to spy on other Muslims and so on and so forth. But there was no such attempt. In fact, that both Tom Gordon and Colonel Setting worked with us to reassure the community as to how the police was focusing on the criminality of the situation and just focusing on that particular case, was not using that as an excuse to open other fishing expeditions into the community. So our experience has been very positive, and it has led to building of very strong relations with the law enforcement agency in the Newcastle County. So without much ado, Colonel Setting.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Elmer Setting, the Chief of Police for Newcastle County, and I just wanted to take a minute to briefly explain my responsibility and what I do. I have about 380 sworn police officers. We give police service to 550,000 people over 427 square miles. Last year, we answered 400,000 911 calls. This is a very small department for the size of the county that we police, but Dr. Khan said something that's very important to me and very near and dear to my heart. The fact is, if you are truly a police officer and a peace officer, you must understand that the constitutional rights are everyone's rights, for every American. It doesn't matter your religion, it doesn't matter your culture, it doesn't matter your background. None of that matters. I have a greater responsibility and a greater obligation, and that's to protect everyone that lives in my county. And the only way you can do that effectively is to understand who lives in your county. I was telling some folks earlier that when I was first on the police department, there was a very, very large amount of people with Hispanic descent moving into Newcastle County. And we were clashing with this group because we didn't know their culture. So we did exactly back then, when the chief was Tom Gordon, what we're doing now. We didn't understand the Hispanic culture, and they didn't trust law enforcement. It was just a very basic model. And we met with them. We found out who the core leaders were. We invited them into our academy. We spoke to them as our peers, and we explained what we're up against as law enforcement, as we are responsible, again, for your ultimate protection. Well, they explained to us just a little bit about how their culture worked and how that a Hispanic male does not want to be put into handcuffs in front of his children. It's not that he wouldn't be arrested, but they don't want to be put down in front of their own children. So we learned this thing where you simply say, will you step outside? And not only will they step outside, they'll gladly go away in handcuffs. The laws are the laws. We all must abide. And when someone runs afoul of the law, we do have a responsibility. That's how we keep organization and people safe in our communities. But when you understood the culture, there was less clash. There was more trust. Now, what you're seeing in the Newcastle County Police Department is we're the most diverse police department in Delaware. So there are many Hispanics now on the agency itself. So you see how things can change when you break down barriers and you step away from not understanding something, such as a religion. We had a man go to a center and kill some people in Colorado. Very tragic, very tragic. Yet no one turns around and says he's a radical Christian and throws the entire Christian religion into the ring. Yet someone runs around with a Kalashnikov rifle and says, I'm a Muslim. We're going to look at an entire religion, an entire group of people and culture. We can't do that. You have to be informed. You have to educate. You have to communicate. That's the key to a better relationship between the community and the police department. We are here to serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel Setting. Our next speaker is Harpreet Singh Moka. He is from the Department of Justice. He will probably be able to speak much more about community relations with the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. How are you today? Good? Good. Well, I'm, as Dr. Khan said, I'm Harpreet Singh Moka, and I serve as the Regional Director for the Mid-Atlantic region for the Community Relations Service. We are one of 59 components within the Department of Justice. We do not investigate, we do not prosecute. We are the professional mediators for the Department of Justice and the federal government. We basically are jurisdiction, or the reason for our work is where there's discrimination based on race, color, and national origin, we come and provide 4 basic services. We provide mediations, we provide conciliations, which is a less formal type of mediation. We provide best practices, and we provide training and consulting as well. Our jurisdiction has evolved since the Hate Crime Passage Act of 2009 to include religion, gender orientation, gender and sexual orientation as well. So we have a lot on our plate, and I oversee the District of Columbia, Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. So I'm running around up and down I-95 and trying to address various communities. I also serve as the subject matter expert within our agency on Arab, Muslim, and Sikh issues. So these issues are near and dear to me, and I follow them nationally as well as within my region. And so I have a lot to say, but what I want to express and highlight is that after 9/11, the Community Relations Service sat down with Arab and Muslim leaders and came together and created an Arab and Muslim and Sikh training. And what we do is we partner up with subject matter experts, meaning Arab and the Muslim community, and we conduct this 101 program. And that's been very successful. After that program, it's a PowerPoint presentation. We do a facilitated dialogue where we have questions and answers. And that's a very, very impressive way to educate and inform people. We've also created this DVD called First 3 to 5 Seconds. 3 to 5 seconds, and they should be outside as well. It's a 15-minute DVD. It's a relatively one-on-one overview about the Arab and Muslim culture. It's great to pass to your teachers, to your friends. We've passed it out and used it at roll call for different police departments. It's a very good tool to provide an introduction to the Arab and Muslim culture, and I encourage you to use this. Being from these communities, we're seeing a rise. The Washington Post has said the other day that anti-hate crimes against Muslims are 5 times more likely than 9/11. So, and then with the recent events, it's not helping the matter. And unfortunately, the country is ignorant on who Muslims are, or better yet, they don't even know Muslims. And there's a famous theory out there called contact theory. And I wanted to go into that just a little bit, in that within the contact theory, it is that if you don't know something, you have a perception and a belief about it. But when you get to know your neighbor who let's say his name is Muhammad, and his son plays soccer, and plays soccer with your son, you know, you see he goes to work, you go to work, you see them every day as your neighbor, he mows his yard, you mow your yard, you take your son to soccer practice, you see him there, you start talking to him, then you get to know Muhammad. And once you get to know Muhammad, your perceptions and beliefs start changing about who Muslims are, what they think about, and what they stand for. Now, I have to tell you, there's a lot of confusion in this country about who Muslims are. You already know that. But I am equally satisfied that at least you guys have taken this initiative. And you've done a great job in introducing and getting to know the county executive and Colonel Setting. I mean, this is half my job's done. But there's still a lot of work to be done. And I mean, I look around in the audience and I see majority of people from the community here. And what I want to stress to you is that we have to get out of this comfort zones. You have to get involved, not only in your political process, but you have to get involved in everyday society here. You cannot just go to your religious functions and eat good snacks and everything else. I know that's great. You want to talk to your people. You want to talk your own language. You want to be, you know, that's the time that, hey, you get to reconnect with people, but you have to get involved with the American lifestyle. You have to get involved. You have to go to your PTA meetings. And I'm just saying that's my personal Harpreet Singh Mocha belief, not the DOJ one. But for you to effectively get to know your neighbor and for him to get to know you, that's what's it going to take. And ideally, you need to do these kind of functions where you're not preaching to the choir. Many of you know what the problems are. You are practicing Muslims. I mean, you deal with these things 24/7. What we need to do is we need to bring our neighbors here. And there are a few of our neighbors here, but we need more of them. We need to create more programs where it's targeted toward or directed towards youth, and people with a different lens on things and that don't know about who you are. And so I think that's where the discussion should go. I have these challenges with my own community. Unfortunately, being a practicing Sikh, we get clobbered in the same thing when there are these rise of anti-Islamic or anti-Muslim, or the Islamophobia gets in a rise and people just confused. They see a gentleman with a turban and a beard and, oh God, you know, and then they see my government plate and they're like, what's going on here? What's happening? And I kind of get, you know, that's kind of funny for me. But, and I tell them, no, hey, I was born and brought up in Texas. I got more in common with apple pie than chicken curry any day of the week. But, but again, that's perceptions. If you look at me without talking to me, you would think that just the way I look, I'm from a different land, I have a different thinking. I mean, none of you would think or have an ideal, except I think I told Colonel Setting that I'm a big Dallas Cowboys fan. So, you know, I get, yeah, some of you are awe and eeing it. But hey, it goes a long way in breaking the ice. Sometimes it doesn't break the ice, but at least it gets to the point that, hey, I have a big interest in this. But you get to know more about me, and then all of a sudden your perceptions for the good or bad change. Discount the cowboy part. But for the most part, these are the things you as individuals need to start doing as well. Not that you all need to become cowboy fans, but I encourage it. They're a good team, or they will be. Not this season, but and maybe next. But anyways, what I want to say in my conclusion is that now is the time for you as community leaders to engage more. And how do you engage? You engage with a plan. And the Community Relations Service will help you create that plan of how to engage with law enforcement. There are multiple issues that we're looking at. We're looking at school bullying. We're looking at hate crimes. We're looking at vandalism of our mosques, vandalism of our homes. We need to learn how to safeguard our homes. And we know we need to learn how to report, too. Statistics show that the Jewish community reports the highest number of hate crimes, and they suffer the most hate crimes. But the other communities, whether it be Arab, Muslim, and Sikh, they suffer quite a bit too. And the problem that we see, and that I particularly see, is the amount of underreporting. Oh, well, let it go. Oh, that happened. Well, no, you have to start reporting. And then you have to start getting to know your local law enforcement officials as well. It's great that your leaders, and Dr. Khan has a great relationship with the panel and everything else like that, but what are you going to do when you're a victim of hate crime? Are you going to call Dr. Khan? Maybe he's on, you know, in traveling on sabbatical or something like that. Then what are you going to do? So I encourage you, and Dr. Khan's a great man and everything, and a great resource, but I encourage you, get to know your representatives on a one-on-one basis so you can be empowered, and then you can report things, and you can actually make this a better country for not only yourself and your kids as well. So with that, I'll end, and then we'll open it up for discussion. I'll give it back to Dr. Khan, who's a great guest.
To share with apple pie than curry. So I interpreted that as saying I'm more American than British, because curry is now the national dish of England, not of India, by the way. So I will now open this without further discussions to questions. I already see one hand. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for your comments. I have a question. What is the threshold for reporting? Because I have lots of friends who know stories that people go to the mall or things like that, and people yell at us, or people have banged on the windows. I mean, does that rise to the level of reporting? I mean, when should we report, I guess?
It's a very interesting question. The lady is asking what is the threshold for reporting an act which can be interpreted as a hateful act? Or for example, I mean, this is actually under discussion, right? When is a crime a hate crime and when it is not a hate crime? So she's asking what is the level after which we should report the crime?
I'm going to try and answer that. It's actually a complex issue because it depends on the individual and the level that the situation rises to. Would you prefer that I come up there? I can come up there. That's easier. Sorry. I'll take that. Thanks. Goodness. Sorry about that. So the question, as I understand it, is, when is this a crime and when is it a hate crime? And a lot of times what that really boils down to is, are you as an individual afraid because you have a right to feel safe in your home? And if someone's knocking on your door, and it's Halloween, that's not a crime. They're probably trick-or-treating or something. But if a child knows that you're Muslim or Indian or anything, and it's not a child, maybe it's just a neighbor, just leave it as anyone, and they're knocking on your door every day, and you feel afraid, that is something you should let us know. Because if it's something that can escalate, we're going to want to be able to say, yes, this began here, and it wasn't a crime then, but it has migrated into a crime. Certainly other crimes, they're fair on their face. They're easy to identify. If someone throws a brick through your window, this is a crime. That's a property crime, and could very easily say, if there were a note taped to the brick that said, we don't want you living here, that's a hate crime. I mean, we have answered many hate crimes in regards to people that have left. We've dealt with burning crosses. I mean, that's a very, very obvious hate crime. We've dealt with people putting swastikas on the garage door of a Jewish family. I mean, that is a very extreme hate crime, and they need to be tracked and reported. I don't know if that answers it perfectly, so if you have a...
Just a follow-up. I'm thinking like when we're out and you're being driving in your car and you stop and somebody is screaming at you, like they see the hijab and then they'll start screaming at you.
You have the right, like everyone else, to call 911. If you're in fear or you're being intimidated, you have the right to report. I mean, it's difficult. I'm rolling down I-95 at 70 miles an hour, but let's say someone was actually following you after they were yelling at you. You really should report that. And if it turns out to be nothing and it was coincidental, we'll figure that out. That's our job. That's our responsibility. But if it turns out you think, well, I don't want to bother the police, which is what we're there for, please bother us. That's why we exist. We want to come to help folks, but we're not omniscient. We need to know where you are and what's wrong. So report it. We'll figure it out. If it's innocuous and it's nothing, then it's nothing. But if it's something and you don't call and they follow you to your home where your family is, not to scare you, but that's significant and that's dangerous. Let us do our jobs. I hope that's a well enough answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to share with you that, we have a very beautiful bridge right in the north, and a lot of people who travel on that bridge stop to take pictures of that bridge. And when Muslims stop and take pictures of that bridge, people who are driving by call in. And the FBI, by law, is required to check it out. So one of the things that I think the FBI probably has one dedicated person whose daily job is to go and check the bridge, because some Muslims stopped to take a photograph on that bridge. So what I'm trying to tell you is that who knows, one of those persons could be doing something maybe in 100 years, right? But I've been hearing this from the FBI for the last 5 years, and they say, well, we have to do it, it's the law required. So some part of law or peacekeeping is due diligence, and non-events are the best things. Non-events are the best things. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, I wanted to say something.
Sure.
Before,
Yeah.
does the mic?
Sure.
Just pass that around. On hate crimes, there are state laws and there are federal laws. And so with the state or in the county stuff, Colonel Setting will investigate. And on the federal side, it will be the FBI that will, unfortunately, they're not here today. They can elaborate a little more on that. So when you report, they'll talk to each other and they'll be coordinated in how they move forward and what have you. But the key thing is I want to say is that there are nuances in the hate crimes law and what have you, and at a later time we can probably sit down with the organizers and try to organize, or even at your mosque, bring the panelists to your religious centers to talk about hate crimes and distinguishing bias crimes and hate crimes and going from there, because they're all subtle nuances. But at the end of the day, I would say report. I'm walking down the street the other day, and this man rolls down his window and says, Osama, go home. And I'm looking at him thinking, on a good day, I'm 5'6", with my turban, I'm about 5'8", and Osama was like 6'6", and everything. And I was like, man, you blind or something. But anyways, I didn't report that because I knew that guy was crazy. But I mean, but if you feel unsafe, I stress that you report. Please, don't overlook it. And I know this is another thing I forgot to mention. In our cultures, talking to police, where we've come from, is like, well, no, that's going to be more of a hassle. In South Asian cultures and in Asia, we need to overcome that, because law enforcement here to assist you. And so that's what their goal and program is to assist you. So I encourage you to report.
Questions? More questions? Yes, go ahead.
Somebody go past you, sit on sound, go home, right? And you work for the Department of Justice, you ain't get their license plate.
He was driving by, and what am I going to do?
Are you telling us to report? That was part of the case.
There's something called a First Amendment, and
There's a First Amendment, but also.
so if I felt fearful, so he drove by and just yelled at me and drove off. But if I was fearful, and I was walking to a federal, I was walking to a police department, and everything. So in that case, I told where I was going. That's a good point. I told the people I was meeting that this has just happened to me, and we discussed the issue and everything else like that. But I did not, in that case, it's a very good point, I didn't feel fear for my life. Now, if that person had rolled down the window and said more things and stopped his car and then he got out of it, then, I'd be running as fast as I could, and I could kind of have 911. It's on, again, in this case, as the Colonel had said, how fearful you fear, what kind of state of fear you feel, and it's on you to report. I just encourage that if you feel that you're in fear of your safety, then definitely report.
I think we should have gotten it.
There are a couple of comments I want to make.
Good point.
Because I will take these two questions before I end. We are going to stop in 5 or 6 more minutes, and after that we have the afternoon prayers where we pray the Zohar, we will pray the Asr prayer there. And then please come back here at 3 o'clock for our politics and justice panel, and make sure that you come back quickly and don't linger outside. The two questions, before I take this, I'll take those two questions and make the comments. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for what you do every day. And it sounds like you're making very commendable efforts for intercultural dialogue. My question was, how are you going about identifying who the leaders of the communities are? Are you simply going to, like, the imams of the mosques, or how do you decide who the key people to speak with are?
I'll take the second question. Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned about the Justice Department. How can people contact and how can we contact your outreach section of the Justice Department? And I think I commend all of you for being here, and I think we need more of these sessions to change the climate that is being created by the media, by the ill-informed, by the people who don't know. As you mentioned, when they talk to you, you're different than just looking at you. So I think we should do more of these. Thank you.
So the second part, I think we can provide information about all the panelists and also other phone numbers. And we will make sure that, Naveed, are you listening to me? We will make sure that these phone numbers are sent to all the other mosques and other community centers and even halal meat stores, etc. in the area. Would you like to take the first question? Yes. Colonel Ferry?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Or
Okay.
Tom? How do you
know that
identify?
the better person to answer it is our county executive.
Yeah.
Actually, the answer to the question is really, we relied greatly on the relationship that the county executive had built with the Muslim community. He actually, it was his idea to do the outreach. We as a police department do outreach all the time because this is what we're always trying to do. We had to respond to the Jewish Community Center, and we had to identify the folks that ran that center and explain to them that unfortunately, because of people that are misguided and misunderstood, that they were in fact a target for possible terrorism. And in doing that, we established a relationship. At that point, our county executive said, you know, I know the great leaders of the Muslim community, and I think we should do the exact same thing with them. And I'm just a big fan of stealing good ideas. So I stole the county executive's idea and met with, he and I met with the folks that he had already identified, and they as by default, they were leaders in their community. But we did extend the invitation to them for them to identify others that would be interested in having an open bridge of communication. And I will say that when the homicide did occur in Delaware inside the Muslim community, we were able to abate everyone's fears that it was a hate crime. We were able to explain to the leaders of that community immediately, calling an emergency meeting at police headquarters, because once something's happened, it's too late to build a relationship. It's already occurred. You missed your opportunity. When we had established a relationship, something bad happened, we were able to identify it and tell them the truth as to what happened in a private meeting, no understanding that they were being held at a certain level of confidentiality, and they were able to calm and quell an entire community of somewhere over 8,000 people that were very concerned. So I think we have identified the best ones. I didn't have a particular scientific method. I just trusted my county executive.
Now, there's levels of leaders. What the first group is, and when it happens, I believe it's going to happen, we had to identify a number, I think 7 or 8, and you could argue over who they are, that are vetted. They come right into the command center, and they help us determine a response. But sitting here thinking, we're revising our website, we could put on there for the Muslim community, because it is going to be the Muslim community in the next year that I believe we're dealing with. Cases like yours, where you can come on and tell what happened. We can do a background on your license plate, and we'll put that out to everybody. So there'll be what may call it hate crime or something reporting. And where you're not sure you want a car to come, but you want to know you have a tag number if somebody just, made a comment, so that we can begin to track the amount of hatred that we're seeing. And that's a real possibility. But in terms of how you expand your leadership, it was said earlier, I was at a mosque 2 weeks ago. We'll come out as often as you want and speak, but the real need is to be able to have Dr. Khan call the staff and say, this is serious, what can we do? Not in the emergency that I'm talking about, where something occurs and within 15 minutes they're in the 911 center. Well, somebody's knocking on my mother's door once a week. Chief, what are you going to do about it? We need to have that, and we're beginning to develop that with the command staff. That's not a typical 911 call where you don't know who's going to show up and that officer takes a report. We need to have those leaders that can identify, my daughter's been followed home 2 days in a row. I need to get a hold of somebody in that police department to get a plainclothes detective over there. And we're still working on that. If you've got any ideas, you can tell us who all the people that you've identified. Mohammed here is working for us too. Who's identified that we can start with, and if you want to add to that list, we can add to that list. The 911 center can only have so many people that can be there in 15 minutes, but I think we're up to 7 or 8. Thank you very much.
I want to make two more comments. Like, for example, the question on the leadership thing. One of the one of the reasons why we have such a good relationship with the police department is because of Tom. Tom reached out to the Muslim community even before he became the county executive, so we know him from before he began his campaign. But you must also understand that the American Muslim community or Delaware Muslim community is not a political unit with elected leaders. It depends on leaders in the community who take initiative. So for example, today we have the governor and congressman and the senator and Tom Carter and the police here. Now, those Muslims who came here today will be able to get their cards, will be able to interact with them, know them, get their phone number. If you were sitting at home watching TV or some football match between Turkey and somebody at home and didn't show up today, then you can't complain that you're left out of the loop. We are not going to come to your house and then say, you are our leader, so please come and meet us in this. So Muslims have to come out and be more engaged with the system before they are able to become part of the system, and that's very important. There are two things that's going on. People who are from the immigrant Muslims tend to be very wary of the police force as an authority, and the other part of our community, which is African American Muslim community, does not have historically good relations with the law enforcement agency. But in our part of the world, we have this opportunity to have better relations. So I'm going to stop with that. We'll break for prayer, and please come back at 3 o'clock sharp back into this panel for the next panel. And I want to thank everybody very much.